Okay, so let's talk about Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a fun story, and this movie, not from what this picture is, but the Disney movie that we're going to discuss is 80 plus years old. So it came out in 1940, which means they spent a lot of time working on it in the 30s. The book has been around even longer than that, and the book is interesting. I highly recommend reading it at some point. So when we're talking about Pinocchio, whether you're talking about the book or the movie or anything, you're trying to ask this question: what does it mean to be real? And that's an important thing, because the very beginning of the book or the movie, Pinocchio is alive. He's brought to life by the blue fairy, but he's not real. And he's not real until the end of the movie. So it's this journey of a puppet becoming real. We want to take this idea and discuss it this week and next week to try and understand a little bit about this question of real. What is real? Another way that you could ask the question, what is real? What is truth? And what do you do with truth? We'll talk about this. Who got the chance to watch the Disney movie?
Which one?
The original Disney movie.
I watched that a while ago.
I watched the Netflix one.
Okay, I might get a chance to watch the Netflix one between now and next week, but it wasn't a mandatory thing. If you got the chance to watch it, that's cool, that's interesting, but it'll help. But all of the screenshots that I'll take or that I took come from the Disney movie. So, but first, let's watch a clip.
Wanted to know what the Matrix is.
What are those made of?
Right now, we're inside a computer program. Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. This is what is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today. Welcome to the desert of the real.
Okay, so what was that about?
Real.
Good. Asking the simple question that we're talking about with Pinocchio. What is real? How do you define real? 7:30 is our in time. Yeah. If real is something that you can see, smell, taste, and touch, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. So what he's what Morpheus is talking about, the king of dreams trying to wake up Neo, the messianic figure of the Matrix, he asks him a question and he gives him a fairly physical definition, right? And in this world where everybody thinks in terms of purely scientific and physical reality, you don't get a very good definition of what is real because you can deconstruct it and break it down to, oh, it's just electrical signals in your brain. That's probing a deeper question to try and get a conversation going to wake Neo up. What this story is going to do is fairly similar in its attempt to try and get us to discuss what is real and what is the purpose and meaning of existence. So this is the opening song. If you've seen the movie, it's being sung as the credits are rolling by a choir, and it's got this very ethereal feel to it, a very heavenly feel. And that's important because there are heavenly characters and there are satanic-like characters in Pinocchio, archetypes that represent it. And this is what the song is: when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are, anything your heart's desire will come to you. So there's an element here that this is the story that we're going to tell you about. If you aim for a high enough heavenly concept or idea, let's say realness, it doesn't make a difference who you are capable of reaching that goal. This is the thesis the movie is trying to tell us. Anything your heart's desire will come to you. If your heart is in your dream, no request is too extreme. When you wish upon a star, as dreamers do, she brings to those to love the sweet fulfillment of their secret longing like a bolt out of the blue. Fate steps in and sees you through. When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. So this is the story and the concept laid out at the beginning. She, who's the she? That's a good question. Why the color blue? Like a bolt out of the blue? Interesting. So the idea and the concept is when you make a wish or a desire upon something very, very high and lofty, a goal set very, very high up, someone, let's call her Mother Nature, comes and actually enables you to meet that goal. But when we come to the beginning of the story, we meet this character. Who's this? Jiminy Cricket. He's the one who's going to tell us the story. He opens it up, and he comes and he tells us, he's going to tell us the story about a character named Pinocchio, and he's got this in a big book. And here you can see the light shining on the book to tell us that this story is important and that you want to dial into this. Now, the interesting thing about Jiminy Cricket is his initials are what? JC. And who's another character with the initials JC? My sister, Jesus Christ. Good. Other than your sister, which I had crossed my mind, Jesus Christ. This is who Jiminy Cricket is, in a sense. He plays the role of what? Cricket. To who? He's what to who? He's good. He's the conscience, or he's going to become the conscience of Pinocchio. But he's a divine figure, in a sense, that he is Jesus Christ, in a sense, who's going to play the role of the conscience. But he's a really bad conscience at the beginning. And this is the thing. The two main characters that are having to figure stuff out in this story are Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio. Everybody else kind of knows their roles in the world and society, and they pick their path. But Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio have to figure stuff out together, and they're both stupid and really bad at their jobs. But in the end, Jiminy Cricket helps Pinocchio become real, whatever that means. So he opens up the book, and have you ever seen a picture or a painting like this? What does this evoke and remind you of? There's a star in the sky. You're close. Say it louder, Allie. Good. This is a nativity scene. It's a star shining in the sky with a little town below telling us the night that someone's going to be born. So there are both religious and pagan pictures all throughout Pinocchio. I mean, Jiminy Cricket in Jesus Christ, he functions in that role in a lot of ways. So here you see the divine up in the sky, and this will turn out to be the wishing star up there, and it's evocative of the nativity scene. But then we leave the heavens and we leave the divine and we come down here to the realm of the world. And this is the place that Jiminy Cricket, the home that he's burrowed into for the night. And what do you notice here? His clothes are ragged and old. So this is not the Jiminy Cricket from 10 seconds ago that opened the book. This is him before he's gone on his journey. He's a hobo, he's homeless, he's ragged and dirty. This is telecasting something to us about this character. So he comes in, and what does he see? He sees a bunch of wooden handmade clocks and a bunch of toys for kids. So he's looking around, and we get the sense that whoever has made these objects is both useful because he can make things, and that he probably likes kids because he's made a bunch of toys for kids. And so the camera pans and we see Pinocchio. What do you immediately notice about Pinocchio? He's really creepy, yeah. What? Okay, he's an inanimate object. Casey, what did you say? I think he's on strings. But good. He's a puppet. Another word for a puppet is a marionette. A marionette or a puppet is something that's on strings and is pulled by other people, right? He's only animated by other people. He dances on their strings and he does their will. But what other thing about Pinocchio do you notice? What's not there?
A mouth.
Good. He doesn't have a mouth. Hold on to that for just a second. So Jiminy Cricket goes up to Pinocchio and he bonks him on the head and he says, "Oh, you're just a wooden dummy." And you hear the hollow sound, indicating to us that this being, Pinocchio, has nothing in his head. He is empty-headed. And so are you. So then we meet Geppetto, who's this kindly father figure who's made all these toys and all these clocks in a fun way. He has created everything. You see here, he's got a cat, he's got a fish. So he's got living creatures he takes care of. He's useful because he makes all these things. And he has apparently created Pinocchio. And here, the first thing that he does is he gives Pinocchio his mouth. So what do we have here? We have the kindly, good father figure who likes kids, makes a kid for himself, and gives the kid a mouth. Geppetto is the good father figure. He's an archetype. What is an archetype? It is the embodiment of a characteristic or idea. Geppetto is the embodiment of the good father. And you can see the types of things that a good father does. He gives the mouth to his children. That's one way to look at this. And Geppetto, as a good father figure, is contrasted with a bad father figure. This being here. So what's happening right here when this scene plays out is that Geppetto's dancing around with Pinocchio. But Pinocchio's still on the strings. He's dancing around. And Jiminy Cricket sees it, and the conscience likes it. But he turns around and he sees this tyrannical father figure up here who looks down with disapproval. And Jiminy Cricket turns around, he sees him, and he says, "Well, you can't please everybody." And it goes back to the fun dance between father and son. So the good father and the bad father are both here in this scene. And there are plenty of bad fathers that will play out in this story. But Geppetto is the good father. So as they're dancing around and as they're singing, the clocks start going off, and Geppetto suddenly realizes what time it is. It's time for bed. And so everybody starts getting into bed. Geppetto gets in bed, the fish gets in bed, and even Jiminy Cricket, who nobody knows is there, lays down to go to sleep. Now, what's the deal with time? Because all the clocks going off is a signal. It's annoying. It will be annoying for the cricket. The idea of time going off signals, okay, a change in time. To what? To night? And everybody gets in bed. But before everybody actually falls asleep, this change in time, Geppetto sees the wishing star and fulfills the wish, or I should say makes a wish that will be fulfilled, to the divine. So he looks up and he wishes on the wishing star. Another way of saying that is he prays. You know, you could describe it just as easily that way. And then he lays down and he goes to sleep, and everybody goes to sleep. But as Casey's pointed out, the clocks keep going and it gets really annoying. So Jiminy Cricket yells, "Shut up," and all the clocks stop. So we've gone, what? Oh, well, because he's the conscience, sure, but the significance, the clocks don't just start, they don't just stop making noise, they stop.
It's like you stop time.
Good, good. The point of the narrative is that everybody's laid down, time stops, and you've entered a dream state. Everything that plays out is now going to be more fantastical, more otherworldly, heavenly, divine, mystical. All of this stuff. Time has stopped and we've entered a dream state with our characters, right? That's what happens here. The clocks keep ticking. Jiminy Cricket yells at him because he can't keep quiet. Time stops. And then the first thing that happens is the star starts shining and comes down into the blue fairy. What's the deal with the blue fairy? She's a magical creature. We've entered the dream state. So magic is within our thought process. She looks at Pinocchio and she brings him to life. The conscience sees it. So the blue fairy, the mother figure, takes us back to that first line. When you wish upon a star, all that stuff. She's the embodiment of nature. And you will also often see that Mother Nature is feminine in a lot of ways. She personified as feminine. She's beautiful, she's powerful, and she really, really likes bringing things to life. Bringing things to life is a very maternal concept, so she often gets pictured as a woman, and she brings Pinocchio to life, and the strings are no longer there. She cuts his strings and fulfills Geppetto's wish. The difference is Pinocchio is not real yet. Depending on how you define real. He's alive, but is he real? I would say no, because the rest of the story is figuring out what it takes to actually become real. And this is important because despite the fact that you live and breathe and draw breath, what on earth makes you real? Because Neo can be plugged into the Matrix. And he's doing all these things and making all these choices throughout a life that doesn't really exist because it's not real, is it? So maybe you and I are a lot like Pinocchio in that, sure, you live and breathe, but are you real? So here's what happens. Jiminy Cricket, JC, sees what the blue fairy has done, and he steps up on a matchbox. Now, the matchbox here is a scaled down version of a soapbox. You ever heard of somebody standing on their soapbox or, whatever? An actual picture of people in history who would take a cheap box that soap would be made and delivered in and stuff. They would stand on a street corner and preachers would literally get up there and start preaching on their soapbox. So he's got a scaled down version of this, and he's trying to impress Mother Nature and say, well, because she's having this conversation with Pinocchio, and she basically says, let your conscience be your guide. And he steps up and says, I'll be your conscience. I'll help you figure this out. I'll join with you and help you figure it out so that you can live in such a way that you become a real boy, because this is the deal that Mother Nature is striking with the puppet. But, as we've already pointed out, he's raggedy and doesn't have any real value to him and himself. So the blue fairy magically changes his clothes, and now he looks like an 1800-year-old. In the 1800s, he looks like what geniuses and billionaires would look like then. So he stays on his matchbox and tries to have this conversation with Pinocchio about what is right and what is wrong. And he's terrible at it. His clothes may have changed, but he is not a good conscience. He is not a good God. He's not like actual Jesus. Pinocchio's empty-headed, and Jiminy Cricket spouts nothing but weak platitudes. And Pinocchio is just like, why? 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 And he can't explain it to him, because he doesn't know how to do the job that was just assigned to him. So he's very upset and frustrated, and Pinocchio is very confused. So, what it takes to be real is you're going to have to figure out on some level right and wrong and how to navigate these waters in the world. Pinocchio doesn't know how to do this, and neither does Jiminy Cricket. Well, Geppetto wakes up, he sees Pinocchio, and being the good father that he is, his son is no longer tied down to strings. He's overjoyed, and they go to bed, and he wakes up, and it's a brand new day. Now, you see all these birds and these doves here? These are one foreshadowing things to come, but these are still the heavenly divine realm of the night before, coming down amidst and among all the people. So there's still an element where, despite the fact that it's the next day, you're still in the dream world. And when we get to the dream world, we get back to Geppetto's house, but this is just outside of Geppetto's house. And here's all these young boys getting ready to go off where? School. They're all going to school, and Geppetto is very insistent and willing to help Pinocchio, who's never gone to school, go out there. Because this is what the good father does for the children. You have to go be educated. I can't keep you here in the safety of this home. You have to go out into the real world, experience things, and learn. Don't shake your head at me, Casey. I'll come over there. I'll teach you a lesson you never forget, boy. No. So you see that the good father archetype pushes the son out there to go learn, experience, and gain education. But what happens? Does anybody know? The first thing that occurs as Pinocchio is going out to the real world is that the fox and the cat show up. The fox does all the talking and the cat doesn't say a word. This is supposedly historically based on some Marx Brothers where one did all the talking and one literally never said a word in public. I don't know much about that, but that's just kind of the historical reason why the cat never talks. So what is a fox?
Sly.
He's sly. What do foxes eat?
Other animals.
I really don't. Bunnies, yeah. Other animals is just a good general answer, but they're crafty hunters. Foxes are a picture for hunters who sneak about, disguise things, and are crafty because they like to hide more than other animals and pounce at the last minute. But they are carnivorous and they do eat other animals. So they become a picture in a lot of ways for anthropomorphic or humanized personifications of creatures that will devour other creatures for the sake of themselves. And we know this because he sees the great Stromboli, this guy here. Now, remember this face here? It crops up over and over and over again because it's essentially the exact same face that we saw right here. Oh, sure, he's smiling in the picture, But that really doesn't mean anything, because does this look like the type of person you want to be around? This is a devious smile. And what is he? He looks like he's going to suck out your soul. I agree. But what is he? Good. Stromboli is a puppet master, and the fox is a hunter who devours other creatures. I wonder if they're going to connect. The fox says, oh, Stromboli's back in town, so they apparently know each other. It's not really part of the story, because all you need to know is the general iconography going on here. The cat and the fox, although you see the tip of the fox's hat, they spot Pinocchio. He's got an apple for the teacher. He's got a book because he's going to school to learn. And the fox stops him and says, whoa, where are you off to? And he says, I'm going off to school. And the fox swindles him by saying, you don't need to go to school. He eats the apple, or the cat eats the apple, and he's got this wink in his eye, and he lures Pinocchio away with promises of what?
Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. To go become what? Not a real boy, not yet. Famous. Okay, so he says, you need to be in the show. Look at you. You're a talented guy. You don't need to go to school and get an education. That will take forever. I can take you to my friend Stromboli, and you can become an actor. Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for me, a high silk hat and silver cane, a watch of gold with a diamond chain. Silver, diamond, expensive stuff. Hi diddly dee, an actor's life is gay. It's great to be a celebrity. An actor's life for me. Hi diddly dum, an actor's life is fun. Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for me. A wax mustache and a beaver coat, a pony and a billy goat. Hi diddly dum, an actor's life is fun. So there's a lot of, you get stuff, silver and gold. You get a lot of fun, and you don't get any pain. You wear your hair in a pompadour. You ride around in a coach or four. You stop and buy out a candy store. An actor's life for me. So you have access to all the things that you want, all the good things that there are, and you don't have to go to school to get it. That's the promise that the fox is making to the puppet. Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for me, a high silk hat and silver cane, a watch of gold and a diamond chain. Hi diddly dee, you sleep till after 2, you promenade in a big cigar, you tour the world in a private car, you dine on chicken and caviar, an actor's life for me. This is exactly the point. 80 years ago, they didn't even have television. I don't think they quite had television in 1940. They may have. But radio had barely taken off. And yet, the promise that's being made to Pinocchio is quick and easy success. Why go to school for 10 years? Why do you go to school to 10? Why do you need school? These days, you can just get on YouTube and make videos and get quick and easy stuff. Why go to college? You don't need to work hard. You don't need to have success. But what happens if all that you are is a puppet on strings? What happens if you define a puppet on strings another way? What if you could call an actor a puppet on strings? Because as we're going to find out, that's exactly what Pinocchio becomes again. And part of this is because his conscience is terrible at his job. He shows up late on the first day of work, his words. And he comes to find out Pinocchio's being led away and led astray. And this is Jiminy Cricket up on the hat of the fox, trying to talk Pinocchio out of it. And they're trying to attack and get the cricket to come along. And so he fails at his job. Pinocchio is still willing to go with them. And you see here, just keep in mind, Pinocchio's walking along on his own free will. So Pinocchio doesn't follow his conscience's advice not to go to become an actor, but to go to school. He ignores that and goes off to become an actor. And so the conscience is very, very upset. And here we get the show that he's in. We get Stromboli. And look at this. He looks a little bit happier than in that poster. he's got Pinocchio, and you see the strings vaguely here. They kind of blend in with the curtain, but he looks like he's on strings. And then he sings that famous song, "I Got No Strings on Me," but he immediately stumbles and falls. And when he stumbles and falls and his nose goes in that hole, Stromboli is very upset. Now, here he's looking at Pinocchio, so his back is to the crowd. And he starts attacking Pinocchio verbally. And you see that Stromboli is the archetypal tyrannical father in a sense. Now, there's plenty of them throughout this story. Because as long as his back is to the crowd, he doesn't see what the crowd's reaction is. He's willing to be angry. But then he turns around and he realizes that the crowd's laughing, they're happy, they're pleasant. And because Stromboli only cares about money, he pats him on the head. They go on with the dance. The cricket is very, very upset. He doesn't like what's happening here. Pinocchio continues on and he dances with a bunch of Russian puppets. He gets tangled up in the Russian puppets. Now, we could talk a lot about, hey, it's 1940, World War II was going on. The Russians were part of that war, and there was big trouble going on with World War I with the Russians there, and with communism and spreading anything. But here's a good takeaway from it. Hey, if you're a dumb puppet and you don't know what to do with your life, you're going to get tangled up in the strings of a bunch of Russians. That's a good way to think about it. Even today. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh and everything, but the multiple character idea of each of these big, stronger beings wrapped up here. I mean, they're like Stromboli. They got beards. They're Stromboli, except 4 of them. Because they like beards, like Stromboli, they have beards, but they're dancing on Stromboli strings. And Pinocchio gets caught up in these strings, but it makes him a bunch of money, so he's happy. The conscience is really confused because Pinocchio actually seems to be good at being an actor. At least good enough to make the crowds happy. So the cricket goes away, and this is really, really bad because check out water. Whenever water's in a scene, you know things are at least about to turn sour if they haven't already. You see Stromboli's really, really happy for a second because he's raked in all this gold right here. Then he tells you exactly what he's like because despite all these coins that are of value, he focuses in on the one coin that's worth nothing. And he's very upset by that. And that's what a tyrant is. A tyrant focuses only on the one thing that didn't go his way. And he gives no thanks and no glory to God for any of the good that comes his way. And that's one way that you can think about a tyrant. So he locks Pinocchio in the cage, threatens him. And you can see he throws this knife and hits an old puppet and basically says, I'll do the same to you if you don't obey me, because that's what a tyrant is. And so Jiminy Cricket's really confused, but he eventually goes back and he finds Pinocchio, and they sit here together because he can't get out. And then this is part of the story. When you don't listen to your conscience retreats for a while. And then when you're stuck in a cage in a situation you got yourself into and you can't get out, your conscience tends to show up again and tries to figure out how you get out. But what happens in the story, because the conscience can't get you out of situations, is that essentially Mother Nature shows up, starts questioning Pinocchio, and has a little bit of mercy on him. But of course, Pinocchio lies. Because he's stupid. He lies, and his nose grows to this point, and then Mother Nature basically has mercy on him, despite the lying and despite everything, and lets him go. So let's talk about this, and we'll stop here for tonight. We'll pick it up with the next part, because this is the end of an act anyways. So why the metaphor for the nose growing when you lie? And look at this picture here. What does it ultimately become? A tree branch. Because this is what happens when you lie. You suddenly you have to remember all these different things that you lied about and all these different things that you have to keep straight. So it's the perfect metaphor, and it's iconic because 80 years later we still reference the nose growing in terms like this, because when you are a liar, you have to keep track of all your lies. So the idea of your lies branching out to you is an apt metaphor in this story for trying to keep track of it all. But Mother Nature is a little bit more forgiving, shall we say. She understands that Pinocchio's barely gotten started and barely tried yet. She understands that she chose a conscience that was no good at the job. So typically, Mother Nature's going to give you a break. Your first stupid decision in life isn't likely to destroy you most often, and you're going to get another chance to become real. What will you do with that other chance? We'll pick it up next week, and we'll figure out that what Pinocchio does is go to a place called Pleasure Island, turns into at least partially a donkey, and then has to go save his father from the belly of a whale.